Okay, hello everybody, and welcome to Fabcast episode 5. Our special guest today is Roslyn Griner, joining us to explore the power behind love brands and what it truly takes to build them in today's digital-first marketplace. Roslyn is an achievement-driven marketing and sales executive with deep experience leading omni-channel growth across the women's retail, cosmetics, and skincare sectors throughout Canada and the United States. Today, Roslyn brings that expertise to her personal platform, How Ros Does It, where she collaborates with global brands as a prolific influencer, sharing practical and inspirational insights on beauty, branding, and building meaningful consumer connections that turn customers into true brand advocates. Welcome, Roslyn.
Thank you.
Roslyn has been gracious enough to answer some questions. We're going to be talking about brand love and or creating love brands. I'm just going to fire off some questions, Rosalind. We'll riff from there, and everybody feel free, Jamie, Carlo, to join in if you need to. So, our first question is, when you think about the brands people truly love, what do you think separates a love brand from one that's just well marketed? Is it emotion, consistency, or something deeper?
I think it's about authenticity and feeling part of a tribe because I do think today, consumers really they choose brands that they have brand trust in, that they think have quality, that have transparency about how they source their products, where it comes from. And today, brand founders are really important because they are the brand advocate, they are the influencer. So it's really important to have brand founders that people kind of identify. And I can tell you that brand founders can quickly descend into destroying their own brands if they go off the rails. For example, recently, Huda Beauty is a humongous mega brand of cosmetics at Sephora. She posts a lot of political diatribes on her own personal brand page. And she offended the Iranian women, these Persian women who are basically buying her products. And they were deeply offended because, obviously, of what's going on with the Iranian regime. And suddenly they're calling for a boycott. So if you are not careful, and that's where I'm saying the brand founder today is tied in with the brand love, and it can quickly turn just by one misstep. So, crisis PR and all of that kind of thing. And I think the thing is really authenticity. Like, for example, Rhode is a super successful brand that Elf just acquired. It's, Hailey Bieber's brand. She was using the brand every single day. It felt very authentic. Whenever she's seen in public, she's wearing the brand. The same thing with Selena Gomez. So I really think today the brand founder is the advocate. And yes, they can hire, influencers to amplify the message. But it really isn't a commercial anymore. It really has to be truly like a conversation and real influence of why they like the products. So, because fake reviews are out there, AI is out there. I don't think AI can really make or break brands because I really don't think people want that. People are going low tech. If you notice, people are like tuning off. They're going for more lo-fi, they want flip phones instead of iPhones. They're really going low tech. They're reading books again. And I think nostalgia plays a large role. That's why everybody's thinking about the 2016s, that era that they see as a comforting era when everything seems so uncertain in today's world.
Yeah, so I think you already hit upon our second question, Rosalind. Thank you. The second question was, where do love brands most commonly break down? And I think in the case of Huda, you described some of the things that could happen. But beyond, maybe the founder, maybe a misstep, there are other pressures that can erode a brand over time. It starts to be successful, like growth pressures, if a board's involved, short-term KPIs, internal silos to, start to override the original brand promise.
So
How
I will say venture capitalism has destroyed brands because the pressure when you get the money to expand and the objective of these venture capitalists is to make money quick, cut costs out of the business, and exit the business and sell it. And we've seen so many of these unicorn brands basically break down and disappear because of the pressures. When growth is too fast, you spend too much money. And we've seen a lot of these digital only brands kind of like basically disappear. We've seen the pressure of retail brands like Essence, having to declare bankruptcy. I mean, it was a great brand, Farfetch, like Net-a-Porter. They've all either been sold, acquired, relaunched. These were brands that had, were like unicorn billion-dollar, valuations, but it was paper valuations. It wasn't really making EBITDA at the end of the day. And we've seen the same thing with Saks and the acquisition by Richard Baker. He's not a merchant. And I think, what makes a great retailer? It's the people, the service. Customers come to love brands like Saks. They come to love their sales associates. And when you start to say, oh, we don't really need people, let's centralize the cash. We saw that at the Bay. There were no people on the floor. You had to like find that one central cash to go. They weren't paying their vendors. They didn't respect their vendors. If you don't have great sales associates who are passionate ambassadors of your retail brand, it basically all descends into what we're seeing right now, where the Bay disappeared and now Saks is very much on the cusp of could be saved, but it could also disappear. Again, people matter. And I think we decided that, everything is about digital first, but no, people still want to go into physical brick and mortar retail. As much as we say that, people still love shopping.
That's a really great segue into the next question. Actually, Roslyn couldn't be more perfect. So, in a world of digital noise, how important then, and like you said, how important are physical touch points? And where in our industry, in the Fabulist, we talk promo and swag, but swag is so many things, right? Even for a fashion brand, some of the products themselves are swag in themselves. But so how important are physical touch points, and where do you think swag actually fits in building brand love and loyalty?
So, it's interesting because as a content creator, I get a lot of swag, like reusable totes. I will say I probably have collected more reusable totes than I probably know what to do with. Sometimes they send you, quarters, half zips, quarter zips, sweatshirts. Um, I think it can help to amplify your brand message, but I think if you want people to actually wear it, you have to really be discreet about how you use the brand logo. Because if it is too like really spread over and the brand love isn't there, like people are proud to sort of say, oh, I'm wearing aloe because there is status associated with it. It's an expensive brand, so you don't mind amplifying that brand. But sometimes brands don't have that brand love. And then when you see it slapped over a big sweatshirt or a big tote bag, people just kind of like put it in a drawer and never want to be seen with it. And also being creative about finding different categories because I do feel like it's overused, the whole sweatshirt and tote bag. Like, I don't know, or water bottle. I think that also is one of the ones that I see sort of given a lot by brands. So I think, people are looking for, like notebooks, because people are writing journals again, journaling. So, that's a nice way to sort of have something that is useful and that they can use in a sort of a lo-fi kind of moment. Um, but I do think retail, like the experience of retail matters. And I think that's the difference of European retailers. They really create experiences like the ambiance, the art, the aesthetics, the architecture all contribute to you wanting to come in and experience the brand. And I do think, creating those almost Instagrammable moments of where people want to sort of be seen. Luxury retail really understand it's about the ambiance, the sales associate, the amplification of everything that builds that brand equity, where they create these bigger than big moments.
I know that when we used to run campaigns, I'm going back to marketing days when we had the marketing team and the design team, in-house design team, you had the merchandisers, you have HR, you have all these different stakeholders, right, that you used to corral together. In a campaign development or when a brand campaign is being launched, and I'm going to relate that back to swag, Swag is often a tool, but it's often an afterthought. How involved were you? Because I see that with a lot of other companies. Designers develop this whole campaign, and then if swag is to be given out to their clients or to gifts or to their employees, it's kind of an afterthought, and the same design attention and strategy is not applied there. What is your feeling? Was it customary for marketing to be really on top of what was going on as a giveaway, as a gift, as a swag item? Where could that
No,
fall
because we
apart?
basically assign that to the PR agency because PR agencies are usually accountable for creating that sort of gift item to be sent to promote the product. It is not usually the design or internal marketing team that is responsible for swag. It really was the PR. I think those kind of like out of the box ideas usually come from the PR agency, not from the marketing team.
And then was the marketing team or the in-house design team, if there was a message that needed to go out, would they be responsible for the design? So how satisfied would you say over your career were you with the PR or third-party vendors creating the swag, or did you get it and go, oof, well, this message was missed? Like, was there a missed opportunity in terms of messaging because marketing or design teams in-house or outhouse or agencies were not involved?
I mean, to be quite frank, we never gave that much thought towards the swag. It was, I mean, I'm being honest.
Yeah,
It
No, I
that's
was like,
good.
listen. I think you just
I
hit the
worked in the
nail on
beauty
the head.
industry. It was like, we need a makeup case, you know what I mean, to go with the
Yeah,
product. You know what I mean? It wasn't like great strategy was put into, what it is, you
yeah.
know. So, and most of the time it was perceived as cheap disposable items that we didn't want to spend a lot of money versus say luxury brands that might give you, like, for example, I'm just thinking here because I'm looking at it. I went to an event and Cartier gave out these like cards, and it's a beautiful, like, very branded card set, right?
Yeah.
So this, I would say luxury brands really think about the swag and how that it has to be very brand identifiable and feel like it's something that you would still want to keep, as
Yeah.
opposed to like most of the mass brands like have disposable, like I said, water bottles, brand totes that are forgettable and that basically go into a drawer somewhere. Honestly, I would say I get so much swag in a week, and most of it is not remarkable. It doesn't retain in my mind. Every once in a while, I go to an event and say, "Oh, this is gorgeous." I want to put that on my credenza or something to
Mhm.
kind of keep it. So I think it depends on the budget, because a lot of times people don't budget accordingly to create great gifting opportunity because they think that the thing that they're investing the most in is their own product that they're gifting, right? So it's not the accompanying swag that, unless it's a luxury brand where they think about, creating a great case for your sunglasses, that would be unique and like artistic, that you would want to showcase it and open and show your sunglasses or glasses, optical glasses, creating like a special artistic moment. That's like out of the box thinking of creating like something and collaborating with an artist or doing something local with an indigenous artist to create
Mhm.
something that's a moment as opposed to something very generic. And most of what I've seen in the swag area has been forgettable and generic and not really something where people put great thought and strategy into it.
So to that point then, and this is something that we talk about all the time, and how can that be elevated? Even if you don't have a lot of money, like you said, it can still be creative and make you think. And because it's an afterthought, that often doesn't happen. But, here's the danger, and we call this in Fabulous the positive experience, the neutral, and then the negative. So when swag is done right versus wrong, it can affect the perception, the loyalty, or the credibility of a brand. Because you get something that's like crappy, you're not a happy camper.
I don't generally, I mean, I don't think about the swag. I really think about the main primary product that is being sold or the service that's being sold and whether that is good quality or not. Um, I mean, that is just my opinion, but I feel like that's where, it goes back to the brand love, is really evaluating the core service or the core product has to be quality. And, does it add value to it? For me, swag is, can you create a moment to break the clutter of like so many people get, for example, as an influencer, I am getting gifted like every single day. There's somebody ringing my doorbell. So what's going to make me like open and say like that PR, you created a PR moment that I want to talk about on my influencer platform. For example, yesterday, NARS is launching a new foundation, and they sent like this black, SUV painted with Sephora X NARS. And this gorgeous guy walks out of the SUV. He's carrying the box, that looks so sort of upscale with these beautiful flowers. And he present like it was an Instagrammable moment that we all stopped to film and talk about, because like, okay, you can send that guy to my house anytime. But it broke out from like the 10,000 other foundation launches. Like, I don't even know if that foundation is good or not, but I definitely wanted to talk about that moment where it basically cut the clutter of many people trying to get me to talk about their foundation. Yes, at the end of the day, their foundation has to cut muster with me and be really good. But that moment created a moment for me and made me stop and think, wow, like they broke the clutter of something that, like I said, if I get one more bag or water bottle, I'm just going to throw it against the wall.
So it's interesting then what you said, Rosalind, because we've talked about this with Jamie and Carlo, is that the swag, when done right, as this was, it was conceived, it was conceptual, it was thoughtful, and it created an experience. And it can do that outside of the brand product because another question I have is that for a lot of brands that have are fashion brands, they actually carry actual products. Well, the product itself could be something that a client would have loyalty to or like or evaluate the quality. But so the question is, what principles do fashion brands get right with these heavy hitter items that service and B2B brands learn from? Because the swag experience you just had with NARS and the delivery, that experience in itself, how can service industries, B2B brands, then use that to create a moment, to create an experience? Because they don't have a product to sell them, they have a service.
No, but I mean, think about, the Super Bowl ads, because a lot of people with services, like they create like intriguing. It's either that, for example, like the Gap, learned from, like they basically hired an entertainment VP from Hollywood to basically be the chief entertainment officer for Gap. That's never been a role in any fashion company. And already that's breaking out saying, we want to associate with the best, like up and coming music. You know what I mean? That was like something that creates something that makes them culturally relevant. And they used to be, the dancing Gap videos, right? So now they're really saying, we're going to go back to our roots of what made us culturally relevant. So, they associate with Cat's Eye, or, the best sort of hip hop dancers, or, being embedded in movies. We're seeing a lot of Netflix, product being embedded in TV series, because commercials, people don't watch commercials. We watch the commercials online on social versus maybe we watch them, on a big sort of moment like the Super Bowl. But most of the time we skip commercials. And so we're having to find different creative ways to cut out there and still, be relevant. Being maybe pairing it with something that has nothing to do with the business, but makes them culturally relevant for the moment. For example, everybody is trying to use the two guys from Heated Rivalry because that was a breakout show. And suddenly everyone's using these guys, Hudson William, and, so I just think that sometimes it's associating with something that is completely nothing to do with your business that makes you culturally relevant, that suddenly people stop and listen because you're associated with something that people find intriguing. So if your business is boring, but suddenly you've hired Hudson Williams to be your spokesperson or whatever, it like cuts the clutter and people are going to listen to the message because they like the person who's delivering the message. I think, I call it the wrong shoe theory. In fashion, we talk a lot about that. Is like, you're wearing a ball gown, but then you're pairing it with running shoes. That's the wrong shoe theory. So you have to think about in business, what's the wrong shoe swag to associate with my brand that has like maybe nothing to do with it, but would have people talking about the swag because it's so out of the box different.
Yeah, you're talking about, yeah, being inventive with the swag, being out of the box, creating again a memorable moment or something that says, ah, this is clever or this is
So, for
interesting.
example, here's an example. Like, for example, we're having the worst winter of our life. It's an insurance company, and everybody's slipping and sliding. How about sending a pair of boots that are the best winter boots that have traction? And it's like people would just say, wow, that's so. I wouldn't expect that to be sent by an insurance company. Like something, like I said, that is so out of the box, has really like not a generic thing that people would post and talk about it because it's something that gets them to talk about, wow, this person cares about me not slipping and breaking my back. You know what I mean? So I'm just saying that we've got to move out of this. I need another reusable tote or water bottle because
Abs-
that is killing the swag business.
Yeah.
So in other words, people that are doing swag have got to up their marketing game.
Yeah, if they want it to be something that's going to add value to the product story or the whole presentation. Like today what you're trying to do is to get people to talk about your product and to get to talk about it on social media. And if it's not something quirky, humorous, strange, it still should be relatively add value and elevate the brand story in some way, but it's got to have that tension that is just not something that is so generic that everyone says, I don't need it. So thank you very much. I think people are wasting a lot of money on swag that like
Yeah.
doesn't add value to their product story.
Yeah.
Yes, like in the case of the cards that you got from, was it Cartier?
Archie.
It was designed, it was thoughtful, it was
Yeah,
something
it's
unique, it was
beautiful.
something beautiful that you would keep. The cards were probably carrying some message that could be meaningful. And I get that, that's kind of what it boils down to. So, you kind of taught, I think your answer on that was like how B2B or service brands can earn love brand status without having a consumer product. Some of the ways they could do it was obviously sending gifts, swagging, creating experiences, but in a meaningful way, in a very thoughtful way, in a
Yeah,
very marketed way, designed to evoke some kind of emotion, some kind of reaction, some kind of laughter, something that makes you go, ah.
yeah.
Um, so if a brand was stripped away of all its ad spend tomorrow, what would be left for people to love? And would that be enough to sustain the brand?
I mean, honestly, today most brands rely on social media. And like I said, sometimes you can have brand love with somebody like the brand founder sitting in front of a camera and people so love their everyday life, the unexpected things, their transparency about the process of how they brought the brand to life, why they chose to do it this way, listening to consumer input about how to build a brand. That's sometimes actually even more effective than the flashy, commercials. So today it's not about how much money you spend, it's about how thoughtful, how relevant, how authentic the brand is. Founders, the product itself, the way they deliver the product, is it unique? The thing at the end of the day, if a product has its own unique USP, that it stands out, that people identify, it's part of their tribe, I identify with that brand. I mean, there's reasons that why people love and will do the hunt with Hermes and spend money for the mythical Birkin. And some other people will say that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard, right? But there are people who love this idea of the hunt, that you want something because you can't have it. And that's the same thing of like winners, it's the thrill of the hunt of finding that one in a million designer item for a great price. Same thing with Costco. So I think you can have brand love based on what your strategy is and, your emotion and what you do on social media, what you do in your store environment, but everything needs to be connected. That's why I do think you need this yin and the yang of the physical brick and mortar to support the online business. It's one can't live without the other. They're both the lifeblood of the brand.
Yeah, totally. I think, when you're saying that you're disappointed when you get something, we talk about swag often for not like the bottles, not the hard goods, but soft goods. Like if somebody sends me an item of clothing that's really cool and I really want to wear it, but it doesn't fit me and it's not my size, it's so frustrating, right?
Yeah,
Because you want to be considered on a personalization, and the personalization level is also very important in the swag world, which is also omitted often. But more and more marketing and retail, people are considering personalization, sizing, fit, and the right fit on both fit as a physical thing and fit as an emotional fit.
I agree.
Yeah. So for leaders listening out there who want to build a love brand, what's the single mindset shift or action you'd recommend they'd start with today?
I think put the customer first. Think about who you're trying to sell to, what, speak to those customers. Because I think, it's an intangible because a lot of people are selling services or products. The intangible is that it really sort of makes the customer feel special. They feel like you get them. And a lot of times it's the brands that really sort of have built a like this kind of like tribe of people who like are the ambassadors of the brand. Like the customer is truly the ambassador of the brand. Like reviews can kill or build a brand. So really being very close to the customer and following that journey with them and getting feedback and incorporating and listening to that feedback is what truly builds your brand. And if you feel like you have something that is so unique that the customer hasn't even thought of, it's really like then really communicating why you think that they're going to love this brand, right? People identify with other people. That's why I'm saying, products, it's not people buy products, they buy people, the people standing behind the brand. It doesn't take much for you to be called out by consumers because everybody has a platform on social media. It's not just the influencers that are influencing. Like, think about how everyday people are going online and giving their own reviews, and they can trash brands and it can bring brands to their knees if enough people are saying the same message. It's really hard to walk yourself back. So that's where, people are craving authenticity, they're craving imperfection, they're craving realness. And those are the brands that are actually winning.
It's such a mixed bag right now, right? It's gotten so complicated. I want to go back to one other thing that we talked about, which has to do about brand love, but you touched on it as well. Can a brand ever be truly loved on the outside if it isn't felt on the inside? And I mean by employees, partners, frontline teams first. And what's one practical way brands can connect all these, the customer, the marketing, the HR, the service, so that employees can experience the brand the way customers do?
I agree that if you don't have internal alignment of everyone in the company, because everyone in the company is an ambassador of your brand. So if they don't feel that brand love of their being treated well by their superiors, by HR, having like free lunches for the employees or whatever it is that they do to like rally the team. And you only treat the customer on the outside as, I mean, we've seen many instances where the CEOs of company have been called out because like the actual employees are treated like shit. So it's really important. Like I said, it's a 360. you know you can't have brand love exterior if there's no people inside the company who don't want to work and align themselves. And the people who like love a brand love the company so much that they'll work overtime, they'll do the extra mile because they love the company, they love how they're treated in the company. I think that's very, very critical.
Jamie, do you have any, you haven't chimed in. Do you have any
You've
questions?
been very quiet, Jamie.
Yeah,
He's in vacation mode.
it's very
No,
rare.
no, no, no. The reason I've been quiet is because, Rosalind, like I'm listening to every word you're saying, and you bring obviously a retail consumer perspective. And there's been so much change in how brands market themselves, obviously, digital and social and influencers. And then I'm trying to think, okay, well, how do we pivot this to the reality of B2B? And I think you nailed it. And it really comes down to how the employees are treated. And if they're not treated like the ambassadors of the brand that they are, it's impossible in B2B to pull off, I love my bank. I love my insurance company. I
Yeah.
love my office products store. And and at the end of the day, I don't really think it's all that hard but it's hard because most people make a lot of assumptions around what brands are.
Yeah.
And and brands are strategic and they're thoughtful and they're intentional. And there are people who just work on them all the time to craft something that resonates with the audience. And then what happens, at least what we see in swag, is that all of that wonderful thinking and research and emotion and everything else that goes into building a great brand gets delegated to, a buyer. And I'm not saying buyers are bad at all, and procurement is not bad at all, but the brand doesn't carry the same rigor um, down into kind of, we'll call it a decentralized procurement environment. And then everyone does what everyone does because they either don't have the courage or the culture of the company doesn't allow them to be creative. And it's just like, well, let's be safe and let's do tote bags. People love tote bags. Ooh, drinkware is popular. And then it just becomes this sea of sameness. And we start hearing customers say, less is more. And then you ask them, well, if less is more, how do you get to less? Because right now you're in such a routine of more, and your budget and the way your company plans, you're just spending the money because it's there to spend. But nobody, when someone says, hey, can we just back up the train here and ask people, is this exactly what we want to do? And then their answer is, well, I don't know. I don't have time. I've got to do all these other things that are required for my job. And then I think the fun of retail and lifestyle, which really could come to work, is just it's dead on arrival. We have a customer, potentially a new customer, who's in the business of providing therapy, connecting therapists with patients over a platform. So it's not a new concept, but it's definitely an important space of mental health and wellness. And then there's a person who's responsible for buying merchandise that articulates that purpose and all these other things. And they're just literally picking products that they themselves like, that have no alignment to the brand and to the mission. It's literally like, oh, I was at the mall and I like this, and I think our employees would like that. And it's just like, are your employees all athletes? No, they're not. Okay, then that brand is not, it's not going to work. And so there's just, I think where I'm struggling with all of this is that brand is intentional. There's a systematic approach to it. It's not just, hope and a prayer. And then it gets into the B2B environment, and it's literally, can someone get us a quote for 50,000 woven tote bags? And I'm just like, no mas, like enough is enough. And
I'm
that,
telling you, and then the employee does and basically throws it out or like sticks it in their car and never looks at it again,
and
like
then
for the
to
next time they
Lori's
go to the
point,
grocery.
it's a brand negative. Or someone in marketing's like, oh, we should do this for our employees, and they go do all these things, and they never had a sentiment survey. And the employees are like, yeah, I don't like the culture of the company anymore. Stop giving me this stuff. Just give me an increase in my pay. And then you see the
Exactly.
brand just erodes. And I think at the essence of everything is the fundamental misunderstanding of brands, in that brands are just representations of us as humans, what we like, what we dislike, what we like about ourselves, what we love about ourselves, like all these things. It's this constant struggle. And the brand people get that. And they're constantly trying to keep up to where the consumer is. And at the end of the day, an employee is just a consumer at work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
And
just think we're missing that.
yeah, and again, going back to the swag, because it's stuff that you do get. If you're whatever you do, whether it be an initiative, whether it be swag, whether it be a gift, the point of the matter is that they all have to be thoughtful,
Yeah.
that they have to be driven by communication messages that resonate with the customer, with the employee. And in treating it as an afterthought, there are missed opportunities for making an emotional connection, which we can call brand love, and also destroying an emotional connection by not understanding that person.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's opportunities to impact on somebody's perception of the brand in a negative or positive way by how much thoughtfulness, ingenuity, care, and authenticity you put into the things that you are doing, be they physical or digital.
Yeah, I think we're at a crossroads. Like brand experiences can be brought to employees at their place of work and influencing and collaboration and partnership. And I really just feel like the Fabulist, like we talk a little bit about bringing the fashionable sense to procurement. And I think we need to do more of that because otherwise we're just going to see what's easy. You know, how many tote bags do you have on shelf? Can you put a one color logo and please send it to us? And no one wants to do that. Nobody wants it. Nobody wants to service it, but that's what we keep doing because, you know, what
It's
anything
the
else might be
easy.
too hard.
It's the
Yeah.
one that's easy to do.
Yeah. And I would like to see more of a retail influence. And that's what I love about Fabulist because it's fashionable and it's procurement and it's branding and it's design. And I come from the merchandise background for B2B. We don't get design. Like we get the design given to us and then we need to go find a way to imprint a product with it. But we're never part of the iterations and the ideation. We're usually fetching for a purchase order. And I feel that's the real miss. And I think in our own little way, if we can change that would be a good thing for everybody.
Yeah, I agree.
Well,
Thank you
thanks,
for doing
Roslyn.
this, Rosalind.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Yeah, I mean,
Obviously, I'm a big yapper.
Yeah.
yeah, but that's because you know a lot
Yeah.
Thank you.
and you've seen a lot. And I think for us, like these conversations, like our last conversation was with a HR leader, and her perspective on employee relationship was wonderful. And I think, you know, this is one thing that's really nice for us is to have these conversations with people who have an opinion but also have experience and that those two things get married. And so we learn a lot every time we have these conversations and it gives us the opportunity to think about our own business model. So thank you for doing this on a weekend for us.
Oh, it's my pleasure.